Ross Truman was born in 1820. Harriet's original name was Arminta Ross. She was one of 11 children born to slaves Harriet Green and Benjamin Ross on a plantation in Dorchester County.
You'll have to drop out or it won't pick up on that.
She later adopted her mother's first name, Harriet. Harriet was put to work at the age of 5 as a maid and a children's nurse before becoming a field hand at the age of 12. A year later, a white man, her overseer, hit her over the head with a heavy weight. The blowout left her with permanent neurological damage, and she experienced sudden blackouts the rest of her life. In 1844, she married John Tubman, a black free man. Harriet moved to the north for freedom, but her husband stayed in Maryland. In 1849, Harriet moved back to Maryland and hoping to get her husband to move to the north, but he was already remarried. She moved to Pennsylvania. She decided to become a conductor of the Underground Railroad. Over a period of 10 years, she made 19 expeditions to the south and led 300 slaves to the north. In 1869, she married an African-American war veteran, Nelson Davis. He died in 1890. Tubman established a place to take care of the elderly in her own home in Auburn. Tubman was not able to read or write. Tubman became active in promoting the rights of women. She died in 1913.
Okay, Colin Luther Powell. Colin Luther Powell was born May 5, 1937. His parents were Luther and Maud Ariel Powell. They came to America from Jamaica. Colin's parents thought that they would have a better life in America. Colin's parents expected their children to take advantage of every opportunity to work hard and eventually to exceed. Colin's mother often told him to make something of yourself. For 3 years of his life, Colin lived in a section of New York City called Harlem, then moved to a different neighborhood in South Bronx. Growing up in the South Bronx, Colin never felt different because he was black. I don't know, I was a minority because everyone there was a minority, he remembered. Weekends were reserved for church. When Colin was when World War II started. He was 8 when it ended. Colin and other neighborhood children pretended they were soldiers hiding between parked cars and using sticks for guns. Colin had a friend named Jean. The Powell's neighborhood was almost like one big family, which meant it was difficult for Colin to get into any real trouble. When he was 8, he tried to play hooky from school. He got away with it all day, but when he got tired and headed home, he made a mistake. He arrived too early before school let out. A neighbor who watched out for him while his parents were gone realized what Colin was up to. That night, Colin's parents gave him a good talking to on the subject of honesty and education. His parents were determined that their children grow up to have more opportunities than they had. They knew that the first step to success is education. Colin wasn't a very serious student. In 5th grade, he was embarrassed to find himself in the slow class at Public School 39. Morse High School, he horsed around a lot. He hadn't found anything that truly excited him and made him want to learn. Once he had graduated from high school, he knew it was time to think seriously about his future. At last, he decided to attend the City College of New York. He decided to try geology most because it seemed fairly easy. As he strolled around campus, he noticed students wearing attractive uniforms with fancy decorations on them. I wouldn't mind wearing a uniform like that, Colin thought. He found out that they were Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC. The students in fine-looking uniforms belonged to the Pershing Rifles, a fraternity that was part of ROTC. He decided to join the ROTC, but he didn't know it yet. But he had found a place he truly belonged. He was still barely an average student in his geology courses. Like elementary school, he was a straight-A student in his ROTC courses. When you find something that you're good at, you tend to persuade, Colin said. Colin was one of the few blacks at ROTC. He was chosen to be commander of Pershing Rifles and eventually becoming a cadet colonel, the highest rank in the ROTC. Some thought about leaving. He knew that education was important, and he was almost able to talk his friends into staying and getting degrees. In 1958, he graduated from college in the ROTC. He discussed his future with his parents and decided on the Army. My parents expected that, like most young men, go into the Army. I would serve for 2 years and then come home and get a real job, Colin remembered later. Fortunately, they were wrong.
Finish this.
It's like the highlights of his life. And this is when he was smaller and when he looks like now. And these are his rules as he was growing up. And here's the kind of medals that he got when he was in like the army. What are his rules?
Name the medals.
Defense Distinguished Service Medal, the Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, Presidential Medal of Freedom, and Congressional Gold Medal.
Okay? Okay, ready, set, go, Tina.
Phyllis Wheatley. She was taken as a slave when she was 8 years old. She had been sitting on Boston raft along with many other black people who had been kidnapped from their African homes just as she had been. They were slaves to be sold and ordered about, and they treated in any way that their ministers caused it choose. And then for the little girl, miracle had happened. John Wheatley, a Boston minister, saw the child. He bought her from the slave trader. She had 2 stepsisters and brothers. She had to learn English and the ABCs. Soon she was reading words and sentences. Then she wrote a poem. This is it. 'Twas mercy brought me from my hidden land through my need the soul to understand that there's a God and there's a Savior too. That was a poem Phyllis Wheatley wrote.
This outline enough?
Nope. Born enslaved in America South, Harriet Tubman became known most famous guide of the Underground Railroad, a secret network that ran in northern United States and Canada. After escaping from slavery in Maryland, Tubman returned to the South 19 times, using varied routes and disguises. She led hundreds of slaves to freedom and was likened to Moses, the shepherd who led the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt during biblical times. There's more, but this is best described.
Right, there we go.
Because I report when it's
It's on it. I'm recording. Hustle. What do you...
I'm going to play George Washington Carver, and here's how my life began. I was born a slave on a farm near Diamond, Missouri during the Civil War in 1864. Shortly after I was born, my father was killed in a farm accident, and my mother, Mary, was bought as a slave. I had 2 twin sisters and 1 brother. The twins died when they were infants. Growing up near the woods and wildlife gave me a keen interest in plants and a great desire to learn. In 1877, I went to Neos, Missouri, a school for blacks. In 1880, I moved to Kansas. At the time, I was finishing high school when I moved to Minneapolis, Kansas. When I finished high school, I went to Highland College in 1885, but was denied because I was black. Then in 1886, I decided to build a sod house where I would settle in Lee's County, Kansas. In 1890, I enrolled at Simpson College in Iowa, but later I needed a better college, and because I knew so much about agriculture and mechanical arts, I started to take more classes. I entered a class for painting of arts and skills of plants. In 1894, I received a Bachelor of Agriculture degree and becomes a member of Iowa State College Faculty. I took a trip from the Ames, Iowa to Tuskegee, Alabama in the fall of 1896. Tuskegee was a black industrial school. As I grew older, I received a master's degree of agriculture degree and becomes director of agriculture.
The theme of Jackie Robinson's whole life was breaking down barriers. As the youthful leader of the club called the Pepper Street Gang, he got into a lot of trouble for going into white movie sections and going into Forbidden Woolworth lunch counter until someone waited on him. In high school, he contracted on sports because he didn't see how studies could improve his career options as a black man. As the star of everything, baseball, basketball, and track and field football, he was fiercely sought after by coaches. In the Army, he organized a baseball team to help him contract bleak contradictions for blacks. Afterwards, though unhappy with his low salaries and harsh lifestyles, he joined the baseball Negro leagues, the only way he could continue with baseball. It was long before the Dodgers manager Branch Rickey noticed his talents. To prepare Robinson for his new job in the major leagues, Rickey and others acted out insulting scenes to demonstrate the hostility he would face and gave him a book about the life of Christ. They also asked him to take the 3 years pledge of silence so he would keep his feelings about his treatment to himself. He kept his promise despite the vicious taunting, opponents' hate mail, and the death threats from fans and the laws that prevented him from going into the same hotels and restaurants as the rest of the team. Even some teammates, verbal about their beliefs that blacks were subhuman, wouldn't sit at the same table with him. People who knew him well were aware of the stress made him nauseated much of the time. He had trouble eating and would twitch in his sleep. What kept him going? The loyalty of other blacks, support of his family and Rickey, the way children looked up to him, his own furious drive to succeed, and an ability to keep his fierce temper under control and maintain his composure. He also knew, as he took part in shaping the Dodgers into a winning team, that he was in for baseball. Within 9 years, 12 of the 16 baseball teams had black players, with blacks gaining acceptance into basketball and football as well. 3 years later, he lost sight in one eye. After his retirement, he became a trailblazer in business and politics. He was an executive of Chock-full-o'-Nuts and was a uniquely powerful spokesman for the civil rights. With his wife, Rachel Islam, he had 3 children and built his dream house among mostly white neighbors in Connecticut. A year after his troubled son died in a car crash, he died at age 53 of a heart attack. At his funeral, Reverend Jesse Jackson called him more of a chess player than ball player. He was the Black Knight and a checkmate bigotry. No grave can hold down because he belongs to the ages.
Just, okay. I think, okay.
Can I go? Mahalia Jackson was born into poverty in a 3-room shack in New Orleans.
Just a minute.
Mahalia Jackson was born into poverty in a 3-room shack in New Orleans. The year was 1911. Her mother died when she was 4. Her formal education ended at 8th grade. She worked as a laundress and a cook. Mahalia took the gospel from her own black heritage and offered it to the world. Her love for gospel music began as a child attending a Baptist church in New Orleans. At 4, she sang in the children's choir. By the time she was 14, she was known as the skinny girl with the big voice. At 16, in 1927, Jackson moved to Chicago, where she lived with an aunt. She joined the choir at the Greater Salem Baptist Church, where her voice caught the attention of Professor Thomas A. Dorsey. Soon Jackson was singing at churches and conventions around the world. A 1946 recording on the Apollo label made her a major commercial success as a gospel singer. In 1954, William Paley, CBS founder and president, initiated the Mahalia Jackson Show on CBS Radio. Mahalia Jackson died in Chicago of heart failure in 1972 at age 59. As she lay in the state, 40,000 people paid their final respects to Mahalia Jackson. Yeah.
I am.
So you better push that button.
Control yourself.
Desmond Tutu. I was born on October 7, 1931, in Klerksdorp, South Africa. I was born into a poor family. My home had no water, electricity, or indoor toilets. At the age of 14, I had TB. I became very ill and almost died. I stayed in the hospital for 2 years. Later, I fought because I can't vote and you can't work in a city. Later, I won freedom for my country. I am the Archbishop of Cape Town, South Africa. I fight for equal political rights for blacks. I am a great scholar and a respected priest. I am a religious leader devoted to political and personal freedom. I battle for equality, freedom, peaceful rights, and in 1984 I won the Nobel Peace Prize for my braveness. The white government rejected my message of equality and nonviolence. My nonviolence influenced my country's freedom for peace.